I'm going to read our statement regarding telephone meetings by the board. It is as follows. These statements should be read at the beginning of any meeting that if we attend by telephone or by Zoom. And they're according to statutes that are outlined. Number one, it has been determined that an in-person meeting is not practical or prudent because of the COVID-19 pandemic and a related peacetime emergency declaration made by Governor Walz in accordance with Minnesota Statutes Chapter 12. Number two, we have ensured that all members of the body participating in the meeting, wherever their physical location, can hear one another and can hear all discussions and testimonies offered at today's meeting. We have also ensured that members of the public present at the regular meeting location of the body can hear all discussion and testimony and all votes of the members of the body. We have urged the public not to attend this meeting in person because of the COVID-19 pandemic and have ensured that members of the public can view and monitor the meeting remotely in real time by broadcasting the meeting on the Cook County website. Number four, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, we have determined that it may be unfeasible for County Auditor-Treasurer Powers, County Attorney Molly Hicken, County Administrator Rita Rogers, and members of the Board of Commissioners to be physically present at the county boardroom at the Cook County Courthouse. Number five, all votes will be conducted by roll call, so each member's vote on each issue will be identified and recorded. I did check on our attendance, and to my knowledge, Commissioner Mills is not going to be attending this morning, unless he so declares himself on telephone. Okay, with that, would you please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we will go into adjustments to the agenda. Please note that we added one under Administrator where it is scheduled for the interviews or the process that we're going through with the administrative search. Any other adjustments that I'm not aware of at this time, please state your name and I'll recognize you. Okay. Then I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll move the agenda. Commissioner Deschampe.
Thank you. Mr. Deschampe, support?
Storlie, support.
Okay, thank you. And we'll do a roll call vote. Commissioner Deschampe?
Aye.
Commissioner Doo-Kirk?
Aye.
Commissioner Storlie?
Aye.
Commissioner Bursheim's aye. Passes. Okay. Let's go to any public comments. Administrator Rogers, have you received any? I have not received any.
No, I have not.
Okay. Very good. Let's move on to the consent agenda items. Is there any item that anyone would like to have pulled as a commissioner?
Commissioner Bursheim?
Yes.
Commissioner Doo-Kirk, I do not need to pull any items, but the item without a letter next to it, public health temp workers, I just need to note for the record that my family is related to the Toft family.
Okay. Thank you. Anything else? And I'll entertain a motion to approve consent agendas items by whole.
Commissioner Doo-Kirk, I make a motion.
Okay. Commissioner Doo-Kirk makes the motion. Support?
Storlie, support.
Thank you, Commissioner Storlie. Let's do a roll call vote. Commissioner Storlie,
Aye.
Commissioner Doo-Kirk,
Aye.
Commissioner Deschampe,
Aye.
Commissioner Bursheim's aye. Very good. Let's go to Emergency Operations Command update. Mike Keyport sent us an email this morning indicating that he'd be absent, but we did have his report. Does anyone feel that that report should be read, or Administrator Rogers, do you feel that you have that available to read, or is it just information for the commissioners?
I can read it if you'd like.
Yes, I think if
It's-
you would please, I have my screen up right now for the
Sure. He said
agenda.
just a few things to report. Acquired 110 gallons of liquid hand sanitizer to be distributed to local businesses this morning and Wednesday morning from 9 a.m. to 11. Emergency managers throughout the state have been asking the state for more masks for county employees due to the governor's mandate, and were told that they would have to use CARES Act money to purchase if masks are needed. Met with U.S. Forest Service and Minnesota DNR to discuss plans in place for an outside incident management team for wildfire response. If an outside team would come to assist, we have good plans in place for response during the pandemic. A reminder that 2 of the bigger wildfires in Cook County happened in July and August. Good news in the meat processing plants in the state. Beef and pork are back to 95% production with safety precautions in place, and poultry is working its way back. Submitted by Mike Keyport.
Okay, thank you. Grace Schroeder, I assume you're with us.
I am.
Thank you for all your work, and gave an excellent report yesterday morning on WTNP, so I'll call on you for any updates that you have. I just wanted to ask you one question. I assume we're not having an Emergency Preparedness Committee meeting this afternoon?
I do have it on my calendar.
I didn't see it on mine.
I'm happy to send that out again and make sure that everyone is on the list. I've had some
Thank you.
trouble with the email group, so that could be part of it, but I will resend. I'll send a reminder out.
I just thought it was bi-weekly, so thank you. I would appreciate that.
Absolutely.
And we'll attend. Okay, thank you again, and please present your report to us at this time.
Sure. So I just emailed it out as well for the board's consideration. Since I last gave an update on July 14th, the number of cases in Minnesota rose by 9,031. Over the past week, the positivity rate for COVID-19 tests, it was 4.8. This is a measure I haven't reported on before, but it's something that public health looks at to determine the testing capacity and how adequate that testing capacity is throughout the state. And the goal is to keep it under 5%. So we're hovering right around there right now, and part of the hope is that the mask mandate brings that rate down, and that's something that we probably won't see go into effect for the next 3 weeks or so, given what we know about the time between being exposed to the virus, becoming symptomatic, testing, and getting test results back that appear on the state's case count. So that's on the state level what we're seeing. And within the EOC, the updates from the past 2 weeks, one of the big ones is that we are preparing to support our area schools as they expect to receive additional guidance this Thursday from the Department of Health and the Department of Education regarding how to proceed with beginning the school year. So providing support to the local schools and building a very strong link between our schools and public health is a priority for us at this stage of the response locally. AEOA received CARES Act funding of their own to assist with regional hunger relief efforts, and our AmeriCorps Emergency Response Initiative service member also won the worked with others in the community, including Andrea Orris at the clinic, Polly James in Grand Portage, and staff at the Grand Marais Food Shelf to host a free food distribution event on July 15th. They distributed over 7,000 pounds of food to 121 households in Grand Portage and another just over 7,000 pounds of food to 99 households in Grand Marais. They are planning a produce distribution on the 6th of August and another food distribution event on August 26th. And this collaboration also includes our Minnesota Response volunteers who've been helping with the distribution events as volunteers. So I would just like to recognize what a wonderful asset ELSA has been to our team in helping to coordinate those events in collaboration with our community partners. I'm continuing to work with County Attorney Molly Hicken and Auditor Brady Powers to prepare for the August 11th elections, working to provide some assistance on what the public health best practices would be on site during election day. Our business technical assistance project continues and is becoming more robust and really ready to scale up. And to that end, we are planning to offer a media release today to publicize that we're available to look over a business's preparedness plans, come on site to provide feedback, and really work with business owners to troubleshoot how they can modify their operations to be as safe as possible during the pandemic. Mike Keyport reported on the wildland firefighter response during the pandemic. That's an effort between Homeland Security and the Department of Health. They have a regional staff that are working on the specific preparedness plans in the case that there were to be a fire incident that overlaps with COVID-19. Andrea Orris, in her role within the EOC as volunteer coordinator, is working on getting t-shirts printed for our volunteers so that they're more easily visible while they are out on assignment. Part of our business project brought to our attention the need to develop some de-escalation resources for staff at local businesses as they do occasionally encounter customers unwilling to comply with COVID-19 related practices such as mask wearing. In addition, we're linking staff at local businesses to dispatch if additional support is needed in difficult situations. With regards to the CARES Act, on the consent agenda, there were 4 temporary part-time positions to support public health response efforts. 3 of them focus on expanding our capacity in case investigation contact tracing as we prepare for the school year and cold and flu season to begin. I think that capacity will be needed, and it will be good to have more people trained to respond in that way. One specifically also works with being that link between the schools and public health and providing additional capacity to that end. And finally, the other is to support the needs of childbearing families during the pandemic who are at increased risk for complications from COVID and also experiencing additional stress and social isolation due to recommendations to quarantine toward the end of pregnancy and in the postpartum time. Other CARES Act funded projects underway. One is we developed an RFP for community agencies that have incurred COVID-19 related service costs that are eligible for reimbursement under the CARES Act. We put a media release out yesterday detailing the application process for community agencies. We're also working on additional support to Sawtooth Milton Clinic for the public health related role they're playing in our response. This includes supporting people in isolation and quarantine through regular nurse calls, potential youth outreach initiatives, and fielding additional public health questions that come through on their phone lines. I communicated with the Grand Marais Park Board last week to request that event permits come to the EOC during the pandemic for consideration on public health and safety before the Park Board makes decisions regarding event permitting. And I saw the first plan come through for review this past week. And as you all know, Governor Walz passed the statewide mask mandate last week that went into effect on Saturday. And I spoke with Joe on WTIP about this on Monday. I also linked in my notes to the frequently asked questions about the mask mandate that are also linked on our hub site. And finally, the Minnesota Department of Health put out additional information in the form of a statement on health equity and COVID-19, looking at how that appears in Minnesota and what sorts of things to take into consideration as you look at health equity and the pandemic in our state. And those are all my updates. I'm happy to take any questions from the board.
Okay, thank you. Yes, it is really gratifying to me as board chair and as a person to hear what's happening at our local level and the support that you're giving along with your staff, as well as those who you collaborate with to make sure that we get through this best we can. And really appreciate that. Questions, comments? We'll go to start with Commissioner Deschampe.
No comments.
Okay, Commissioner Doo-Kirk.
As always, Grace, thank you so much for your work. I don't have any questions. Over.
Commissioner Storlie.
Well, once again, it's always great to hear her updates, no matter on WTIP or today, but there's always a word that comes through for me, and that's preparedness. And that's a key word in Mike's report and with what you're working with too is great. So thanks for helping us being prepared. Over.
Well said. Okay, thank you again, Grace, and I'll be visiting with you this afternoon as well. And thanks for all your work with the Emergency Preparedness Committee. That's a pretty vital communication system that we have, and very helpful.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, we'll go to our assessor, Bob Thompson. Are you with us now?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yes. And I know we've been going back and forth on email, and I guess that we should resolve how we should proceed with these property tax abatement applications. Do we do them individually, or can we do them as a group? Have you heard any more from the Department of Revenue?
I have not, Mr. Chair. I guess my suggestion or my recommendation would be that the board can handle it whichever way they see fit. I think if there's a reason a commissioner would like to pull one of the applications and look at it separately or treat it differently, they could do that. Or a group of them, treat them differently as groups. But I think that these are all recommended for approval by me and Brady Powers. So I guess I would leave it up to the board whether or not they want to do them separately or any of them separately.
Okay, I think then as board chair, I would just think it's best to be cautious and take each one. So if you could present each one, then I'll quickly ask if there's any concern by any commissioners or any more information, and then we'll take action and just move on. Does everyone understand that? Okay, very good. Well, let's go to the first one.
Certainly, Mr. Chair and Commissioners, this first application, parcel 80-146-0170, that is going to be for White Pine North, the fire in downtown Grand Marais. $2,200 and $2,242 for the property tax abatement on the structure fire there.
Okay. Any questions or comments from the commissioners? Please state your name and I'll call on you on this item. Then I'll entertain a motion to approve this abatement.
Motion to approve. Storlie.
Okay, support.
Doo-Kirk.
Okay, roll call vote. Commissioner Doo-Kirk?
Aye.
Commissioner Deschampe?
Aye.
Commissioner Storlie?
Aye.
Commissioner Bursheim? Aye, passes. Thank you. The next abatement?
Yes, Mr. Chair, the next abatement, parcel ID 80146 0180. This is for the Cricket Spoon, and the abatement amount is for $72.80. That would just be for the date of the fire on for the structure only. They still pay the tax on the land. So.
Okay. Any questions or comments? Please state your name. We'll entertain a motion to approve this abatement.
Commissioner Doo-Kirk, motion to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Doo-Kirk. Support?
Storlie supports.
Thank you, Commissioner Storlie. Roll call vote. Commissioner Storlie.
Aye.
Commissioner Doo-Kirk.
Aye.
Commissioner Deschampe.
Aye.
Bursheim. Aye. Passes. Next one.
All right, so the next one here is actually a series of 3 for the same property, the same taxpayer. They filed a homestead application that, for clerical reasons, was not approved, and it should have been. They did occupy that property for these 2 years. So parcel ID is 272400050. Applicant Daniel Court. The 2018 payable year, the reduction amount would be 502 for approving that homestead retroactively.
Okay. Any questions or comments? I'll entertain a motion to approve the abatement.
Commissioner Doo-Kirk, motion to approve.
Okay, support?
Storlie supports.
Thank you. Roll call vote. Commissioner Deschampe.
Aye.
Commissioner Doo-Kirk.
Aye.
Commissioner Storlie.
Aye.
Bursheim's aye. Thank you. The next one.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the next one is the same parcel, same taxpayer. The amount for 2019 payable is $494.
Okay. Any questions? Entertain a motion to approve abatement.
Commissioner Doo-Kirk, motion to approve.
Thank you. Support?
Storlie supports.
Thank you. Roll call vote. Commissioner Doo-Kirk.
Aye.
Commissioner Deschampe.
Aye.
Commissioner Storlie.
Aye.
Commissioner Bursheim's aye. Passes. Next one.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The final one here is for tax year 2020. Same taxpayer, same parcel as the last 2. And the abatement amount for this one is $836 as changing from residential, and the other 2 were seasonal.
Okay. Very good. Questions? Entertain a motion to...
Commissioner Doo-Kirk, motion to support.
Excuse me. Motion. Okay. And then do I have a motion to support?
Storlie supports.
Thank you. Roll call vote. Commissioner Storlie.
Aye.
Commissioner Deschampe.
Aye.
Commissioner Doo-Kirk.
Aye.
Mr. Bursheim, aye. Okay, thank you, Bob, for all your work and presenting this abatement process to us this morning. Any other comments,
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Assessor, do you have?
Yes, thanks, Mr. Chair. I actually would like to make a comment. I did attach the current abatement policy to the packet there. So you guys can kind of, if you want, look it over. But Molly, Hicken, and I, and Brady Powers have been working on updating that abatement policy. It's something the Department of Revenue has kind of been pushing all counties throughout the state to do. So I think at the next board meeting on the 4th of August, we will probably be looking at an abatement policy update for a resolution. And as part of that, which the commissioners may want to consider in the meantime, is some counties or cities will administratively approve it ahead of time up to a certain dollar amount. So you could say up to $500 or up to $1,000 can be administratively approved by the auditor. So that's just something to consider. We'll discuss it at the next meeting, and I guess that could kind of take some items off of these board agenda meetings to try and save some time.
Okay. Very good. Seems reasonable. We'll look forward to seeing that update prior to the next meeting on August 4th.
All right,
Okay,
thank you.
thanks so very much. Thanks for all you do, Assessor.
Thanks.
Go to Land Services, and we got an interim use permit request for a commercial fueling facility in Schroeder Town Center, and I assume Tim is with us to present that
Hi, Tim.
from the Planning Commission.
It's Bill.
Actually, Tim is here, but Bill should be the one
okay.
who's presenting.
Excuse me, Bill. Okay.
Tim, do you want to take over? That's fine.
Bill, go ahead.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. This is a interim use permit request which was forwarded from the Planning Commission after their July 8th, 2020 meeting. This involves a commercial fuel facility in Schroeder Town Center at the site of the former Cross River Cafe, which has been in Van Doren family ownership since the 1970s. The cafe burned down in 2002, and since then the property has been vacant. It includes 1.1 acres with approximately 130 feet of footage on Highway 61. This request was a pretty well-discussed request, and I worked with Mr. Van Doren to try and get it to the point where it was, all the issues that were relevant to the request were addressed to the Planning Commission and also discussed by the Planning Commission. I received several calls and comments in opposition to this. Part of the problem is that it abuts the Cross River Cafe, and the acreage is only 1.1 acres, as mentioned. And so the logistics of getting in with commercial hauling vehicles was not well defined. And in fact, there was an extrapolation that most vehicles would have to go in, back up, and that sort of thing, which was the point of objection from several of the adjoining property owners. So the discussion then ranged over to the technical component of the proposed construction, and Chuck had drawn up quite extensive plans, but in the eyes of the Planning Commission, they felt that they needed to have a little more engineered perspective, and in fact, several comments did suggest that the engineering be involved with the design and the plans. Part of the issue also was that we sent out public notices and we didn't receive anything in comment back from the Minnesota DNR or the Minnesota Department of Transportation, which would be a concern because they would obviously comment on that one way or the other, and I have contacted them and haven't received any response back from them since the July 8th meeting. So that said, the property owner opposition was pretty consistent. There was no one that voiced favor for the request, and talking to Chuck and knowing what, he's a commercial hauler, and we did this a couple years ago up at the Dean Berglund pit, and Dean never initiated the construction, and that permit has now expired. So it's a commercial hauling operation. It's a resource. Everybody has been in Grand Marais or the Holiday in Tofty when there's an over-the-road hauler there, and it's difficult for them to get in, and it's difficult for them to maneuver. And so it's a great idea. And I don't think that has been dismissed in one iota of comment. So the issue became, for the Planning Commission, the location. And given its proximity to the Cross River, to Highway 61, concerns about congestion, pedestrian traffic, poor sight lines, that sort of thing, the Planning Commission voted 4-2 to deny the request from Mr. Van Doren and forwarded that denial recommendation to the Board of Commissioners.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Lane from any of the commissioners or comments on this denial for IUP? Please state your name.
This is Commissioner Deschampe.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I talked to Mr. Van Doren yesterday afternoon, and he told me he was going to be getting some engineered drawings for this, and I would, well, I'll see if anyone else has any comments. So.
Okay. Anyone else has any comments?
Chairman Bursheim, this is Commissioner Storlie.
Yes, go ahead.
Well, many years ago, Schroeder's board had a little downtown plan, and part of the plan certainly would not be something that would be as flammable or pollutant as this, right next to the falls, right next to going into Lake Superior. This probably would be a good business somewhere. Mr. Van Doren probably could be looking into another location, but not right by a water source, not by a community of people who live close by, and so I will not be in favor of that. Thank you.
Any other?
Commissioner Doo-Kirk?
Go ahead, Commissioner Doo-Kirk.
This is exactly what happened at the Planning Commission, the comments like Commissioner Storlie. Mr. Van Doren has put in protections and precautions that far exceed anything that would ever be needed to protect the waterways. His protections far exceeded anything that Mr. Berglund had up in my district, and there is also water resources nearby my district. Mr. Van Doren needs to get more information to the Planning Commission and more drawings, and we also need to hear from the MPCA on this, but there really isn't any danger to the waterways nearby there. There was a gas station in that exact location for many, many, many years that didn't have the precautions and protections that Mr. Van Doren was putting into this. He lives right in the area. He does not want anything to happen to the waterways near his home. And, you know, when you have a planning commission member who's questioning whether or not there's an electric automobile hookup, it's clear that people do not understand what this application is for. Electric semi-trucks do exist, but do you honestly think one can come up here and operate? Is the most ridiculous conversation that happened before the Planning Commission. I think that we need to encourage Mr. Van Doren to reapply and to be better with getting the information so people understand exactly what this is. And again, this is a request from the Planning Commission to deny it. It's not, you know, whatever, over.
Excuse me, would you repeat that, Commissioner Doo-Kirk, your last statement? I didn't quite understand it.
I had nothing else to say. It's just silliness. Over.
All right, well, we have before us a recommended denial of the IUP request as it was submitted. And any other comments or questions before I call for a motion to support the commission on this? And if we get none, then we'll entertain a motion to not support it. I don't know where that's going to go, but let's just call for the question. If there's no more comments, would there be a motion to approve the recommendation of denial for the IUP request? Okay. So I'll ask the question. Is there a motion to go against the commission's recommendation and let this project go forward.
I'd like to make the motion to send this back to the Planning Commission. As I stated, I talked to Mr. Van Dorn yesterday, and he is getting more engineer drawings or something there. So I'd make that motion to send it back to the Planning Commission.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. Do we have support to that motion?
Second, Commissioner Doo-Kirk.
Okay, very good. Let's do a roll call vote. Any more questions or comments on that? So there was a motion to send this back to the Planning Commission and to work with Mr. Van Dorn.
Can I ask a question? Specifically, what, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, I'm just,
Yes.
we just need direction.
Please speak up. I don't hear you that well.
You got to talk into the
Yeah, I
phone.
might have to walk up here.
Oh. Commissioner Bursheim, I just want to, if we need clarification on specific information that the Planning Commission should generate before bringing it back to the Board of Commissioners.
Okay, I'll put that back to Commissioner Deschampe. You made that motion. So do you have anything to offer in that regard to Mr. Lane's request?
I'd just like to make sure Mr. Van Dorn has the opportunity to present the stuff that he told me he was going to.
Okay.
You know, and that if that'll satisfy the commission, you know. I agree with Commissioner Doo-Kirk. Some of the comments on here are a little ridiculous, and, you know, I don't know if they're not understanding what this thing is. You know, to say they don't want a fuel stop right there. Apparently, maybe the people in Schroeder don't know what's on the other side of the river, a quarter mile down the road. You know, I'm not going to go there, but I'm sure Bill knows what I'm talking about.
So, and just for clarification, if it is sent back with new information to the Planning Commission, it will have to be re-noticed. So we'll just have to do this request again. I'll be in contact with Mr. Van Dorn and we'll get that figured out.
Sounds good.
Okay, any other questions? I think we all understand where this is going to go. So if there's no more comments, I'll call for the vote. The vote is to send this back to the Planning Commission to work with Mr. Van Dorn. It'll be posted again, and they'll go through the process and come back to the board with the recommendation. So, a roll call vote. Commissioner Storlie.
No.
Okay. Commissioner Doo-Kirk.
Aye.
Commissioner Deschampe.
Aye.
Wow. This is interesting. In all due respect to Commissioner Storlie, I think to move this forward, and we do have a final, another chance to really weigh on this a little bit more. I really respect what you're stating, Commissioner Storlie, and by my motion, my vote to approve this is only to bring it back to them to see if more resolution can come, but I don't necessarily support the project at this time, but only to give it a little bit more opportunity to be vetted and gone over. So I will vote aye on the motion to send it back to the Planning Commission and go through the process again, and we can weigh in on that later. Thank you, everyone, on that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bill.
We'll go to equipment purchase for recycling center. I would assume Tim Nelson, you're going to handle this one.
That is correct, Mr. Chair. I'm hoping everybody can hear me.
Yeah.
Okay. This is a request that I've brought before. It's a fairly routine. Every so many years we do have to replace equipment from the recycling, processing, and transportation. The trailers and the semi-trailer seem to take the most amount of hits just because of the weather and such. Actually, over the course of this last winter, the snow load on one of the trailers was sufficient enough to collapse the whole roof end. And looking at the repair cost as opposed to just replacing it with another used trailer, it makes more sense to replace it again. We've been fairly frugal with our equipment, and also with the flatbed trailer, with the green trailer with the recycling bins on it. We've worked with the manufacturer of those trailers to try and come up with ways to make them last longer, less of a weight load, but still stronger. We had tried heavy-duty plastic bins for a while, and now this is kind of our first shot at aluminum bins. One of the problems with the heavy steel bins is they tend to rust a little bit quicker, and then the weight on them kind of is a little much for the flatbed trailer that they're on, and so this is kind of our first shot at aluminum for the trailer, or for the bins anyway. Like I said, this is a request that I've brought before to the board on a number of occasions. We do have a fund set aside that we've been fortunate enough to be able to cover the cost of the replacement. There's in excess of $400,000 in that fund at the request of the Board of Commissioners some years ago. We've been steadily putting about $20,000 a year in to keep that fund replenished. So this request is just for the replacement of one green recycling trailer and one semi-trailer, and for the funds to be coming out of that future landfill development portion of the fund, and so it will not impact the budget in any way. And I guess I would just open it up for any questions then.
Sure, very good. Thank you. Any questions from any of the commissioners on this? Please state your name.
Commissioner Doo-Kirk.
Go ahead, Commissioner Doo-Kirk.
Tim, does this quote include signage and instructions for people to use the recycling bins, since it seems to be a complicated thing for some people? Over.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Doo-Kirk, we actually take care and do the signs on our own so that we can kind of custom tailor those. So, yeah, we take in the comments in terms of what people have found to be a little confusing about that, and we kind of adjust the signage to each set of the new trailers that we have. So, yeah, that will be under consideration. We know we've had some issues because of the locking arm. We try to keep the bins or the lids. One of the problems is we want the bins light on the lids on the top light so that people can lift them up, but then we need to secure them down. So there's a bar that covers over the top of them, and some people struggle with that. So yes, we will be taking care of appropriate signage.
Thank you. That's all I had.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments for Mr. Nelson?
Commissioner Storlie here. Well,
Go
in the
ahead.
West End, we have wonderful green bins, and we have the use of cardboard, and it says magazines, trash, whatever. So we make use, and most people know. By now, we know that first it's recyclable paper, and then it's magazines, newspaper, whatever. So anyway, I'm glad to hear that there'll be a replacement or two coming down the line. Thanks, Jim. Over.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I'll entertain a motion to approve this purchase for a multi-bin recycling trailer and one used semi-trailer.
This is Commissioner Dish. I'll make that motion.
Okay, I think I heard, well, I don't know who I heard first, but I'll give it to Commissioner Deschampe. Commissioner Doo-Kirk, would you support?
Yes.
Thank you. Roll call vote. Commissioner Doo-Kirk?
Aye.
Commissioner Storlie?
Aye.
Commissioner Deschampe?
Aye.
Commissioner Bursheim's aye. Passes. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you.
For your work on this. Now we'll move
Thank
on
you.
to the auditor. The first item on the agenda is CPA Firm Audits. We received some information on that, and I'll turn it over to Auditor Powers to give a little background information. I think you explained it very well in your memo to us, but I'll turn it over to you now. Ready?
Mr. Chair, yeah, this has been an idea that's been around for a number of years. Some counties historically have had private audits for, I'm sure it's gone on for decades. It's always been at the discretion of the state auditor's office. I think they gave the ability to some of the larger counties, and they also look at their own staffing levels and keep their teams, functioning at full level. So we were never allowed to test the private market until 2015. The legislature gave that authority to all counties to choose that for themselves. We never looked at it at that point because the board had made a decision right at that time to sign a contract with the state to do the next 3 audits after that. And so this is actually the first date that we could consider it, because you can only consider it on an even year. I'm not sure where that comes from, but that's in the statute. So this is an even year, and we have to notify the state auditors by August 1st of an even year if we intend to try or to seek a CPA firm audit. And that wouldn't take place until the audit for the next year. So it would actually be 2021 audit. This year they're doing the 2019. Next year the state auditors would do the 2020. So this would put it into effect for 2021 audit. And if you do it, you're then also required to do it for 2 years. So it would be the 2021 and 2022 audits for sure that we would do, and then we could choose after that time whether to continue or not. So the reason, counties have lots of varying reasons to do this. Some have found that the state audits are slower than they wish. They like their audits to come sooner, and they have found that sometimes they can get them quicker from a private audit firm. Some do it because they expect to receive savings, and some have. I've seen some relatively large savings in some places, and some like it because some of the audit firms just provide different kinds of financial services too that the state auditors don't always provide as part of their service. Those are the 3 main reasons that I've heard. So I don't have a personal strong feeling regarding this. Our audits have been faster the last few years. We used to get them, as late as September, and we wouldn't know our fund balance number from the audit, for example, until sometimes late in September. Now we get our audits, and usually they're finished in July. At the latest, we could cut costs potentially. We wouldn't know until we did RFPs and sought that out. One of the things for us is that we always have single audits up here. That's a term for when you receive over $750,000 of federal funding in a year that requires a federal audit. So, and sometimes we have more than one single audit, and they're done separately, and they add to the cost. So, I would guess that we would still see some benefit to cost because a lot of counties have, but maybe not as much as some of them do because of our single audits, kind of our special case up here. We always have the boundary waters money, always because it's a single audit. And then we have federal funds for highway projects, sometimes even human services. So sometimes our airport, sometimes we have more than one single audit. So part of why I bring it right now is that it was of strong interest to some commissioners in the past, back when we couldn't do it. I don't think any of those commissioners are here now, but
I knew at that time that there was, they wanted to do it, we didn't have the ability. So I just feel the responsibility to bring this forward because this is our chance, and then we would wait 2 years for another even year to have another chance at this. I'm happy with whichever decision you make. Okay. Well, let's see if there's any questions. First, please state your name.
Commissioner Doo-Kirk.
Go ahead, Commissioner Doo-Kirk.
I support this because the EDA is a joint powers and they are stuck with whatever decision we make, and they pay a ridiculous amount of money for an audit, so I think that there will be a savings. We should at least give them the chance to see if there is or not. Over.
Okay. Any other comments? Questions?
Commissioner Storlie here.
Yes, go ahead, Commissioner Storlie.
So Brady, this would be a 2-year, let's see how it works for us? Is that the question?
Yes, it's right. They put that in there, I think, probably for staffing concerns. They don't want people jumping back and forth every year, so they said if you do it for 2 years so that we can manage our staffing for our teams. But then we could say, okay, we have let's suppose we didn't save a lot of money. Let's say it wasn't, or maybe we didn't save any. And we say, okay, we tried it. Let's go back. So in 2 years we could decide to go back to the state auditors.
Mm-hmm. Well, that seems reasonable. Thank you.
Okay. Now, just a technical question, Auditor. We have a resolution to go ahead. You would have RFPs submitted. What if they come in, this is a what if they come in at very high? Would you want the option to refuse them and go to the state or not? Yeah, I would keep that from them if it was very high. Okay. Very good. So, any more questions or comments? And then I'll try to frame this a little bit for the situation. Based upon what I heard Auditor Powers say, I would entertain a motion to have a resolution to submit RFPs from a private CPA firm and make a recommendation on whether to proceed with those or continue with the state. Auditor Powers, is that statement sufficiently appropriate, do you think? I think I would. Well, it's in the resolution, and I think that's basically what we want to say, that we're resolving to notify the state auditor that we plan to have the audit by 2021. You know, we may choose not to, but I think the statement in there is what we have to tell them. Okay, very good. So I would entertain a motion for that resolution as presented to us.
Commissioner Doo-Kirk, motion to approve resolution.
Thank you. Do we have support?
Storlie support.
Okay, very good. Any more comments or questions? All right, we'll do a roll call. Commissioner Doo-Kirk?
Aye.
Commissioner Storlie?
Aye.
Commissioner Deschampe?
Aye.
Commissioner Bursheim's aye. Thank you. Thank you. We'll go to fiscal and budget policies. We did receive some recommended changes. These have gone through and came from the Budget Advisory Committee, and it was discussed in General Government Committee. And so I'll turn that over to you again, Auditor Powers, for any comments you'd like to make in presenting this information.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah, you'll see it for the public. I'll just briefly go over some of the changes in here. So the fiscal policy had a mission, but it wasn't our current mission. So this has been amended to supporting community through quality public service. Our current policy. And there were just a couple of minor changes down in D. County board may set expense parameters for county departments. A more general statement. We added the word that the county board directs departments to evaluate their programs and services levels. We added through its administrator because we're now an administrator form of government. We took out a couple of items like number E because that's actually contained within the budget policy. Under the revenue policy section, we changed some words to say we establish policies for charges and fees. Just a different wording. F, we added wholesale. This is a suggestion from the committee. Whenever possible, the Cook County Board will ensure in its budget preparations that anticipated expenses are paid with anticipated revenues raised during the same fiscal year. The board will eschew deficit budgeting that relies on use of fund balances. Only in an emergency or when fund balances exceed previously set levels should fund balances be used to fund current expenses during budget preparation, and then only for one-time expenses and with explicit public acknowledgement and a plan for restoration of the fund. Then we cut out letter F because it's anachronistic, something that we don't use, suspense account. And finally, on the fund balance policy, the county's goal is to maintain fund balances in the general and major special revenue funds to meet cash flow needs, to meet unexpected large revenue losses or expenses, maintain our AA bond rating or equivalent. The county's goal is a general fund unassigned balance of 75% of current expenses, highway fund assigned balance of 60% of current expenses, public health human services assigned balance of 40% of current expenses. And the goal for the general fund and all special revenue funds combined is a fund balance equal to 75% of current expenditures.
Okay. And let's do a roll call. Oh, go ahead. Any other comments?
No, I'm just going to say that concludes the changes made to the fiscal policy.
Okay. Well, let's do a roll call for each commissioner on this to ask any further questions or comment about a specific policy that we're talking about, which is the Cook County fiscal policy, and then we'll go on to the other. We'll try to take action on this and then move on to the others. So we'll start with Commissioner Deschampe. Questions, comments?
Yeah, I like the changes that they made to it, and I would support this.
I'm sorry I didn't hear you, Commissioner Deschampe. Could you please repeat?
I said I like the changes they made to this, and I would support this.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Doo-Kirk?
Make me throw my pen again.
No questions, no concerns.
Okay, Commissioner Storlie?
Thank you. I appreciate all the work that everybody's done, and it brought it up to some guidelines that hopefully the Budget Committee can work with, and of course eventually coming to the board. So thank you, Brady, and thanks everyone who worked on this. Over.
Okay. Very good. Any more comments or questions? I'll ask for a motion to adopt with these changes this policy.
Commissioner Doo-Kirk, so moved.
Do we have support?
Storlie support.
Thanks, Commissioner Storlie. Any more comments or questions? Roll call vote. Commissioner Storlie.
Aye.
Commissioner Doo-Kirk.
Aye.
Commissioner Deschampe.
Aye.
Commissioner Bursheim passes unanimously. Very good. Let's go on to the Cook County budget policy.
Mr. Chair, the changes to the budget policy were relatively minor. Just some wording changes. The auditor's office adjusts, instead of using the acronym IFS, we put in the language integrated financial system. And the main change is that the committee wanted to expand the review going on annually or during the year for the general fund. So changing it to auditor's office distributes monthly budget to actual reports to general fund department heads rather than quarterly, so that there's a monthly report in everybody's hands to for them to take a look and see if there's anything they need to get their arms around, changes going on. And that's the main changes.
Okay. Any questions or comments? They're minor, so I just will not do a roll call on this. But please state your name if you'd like to comment or question on these changes for the budget policy. I will then call for a motion to approve the Cook County budget policy as presented to us.
Commissioner Doo-Kirk, so moved.
Thank you. Support?
Storlie, support.
Thank you. Roll call vote. Commissioner Doo-Kirk?
Aye.
Commissioner Deschampe?
Aye.
Commissioner Storlie?
Aye.
Commissioner Bursheim's aye, passes unanimously. Okay. Then we have one more budget policy. Is there anything else you have with that, auditor?
No, I think some things got printed twice. If that's
That's what I'm wondering.
Yeah. So that was it. That's what we followed.
Very good. Thank you. Thanks for the work of all those that invested in this, and especially from our budget advisory committee that really vetted in on some of the wording of important policy, as well as your office, lady.
And especially, I'd say especially interim administrator. I read a lot of.
Oh, very good. Yeah.
Pull this all together.
Yes. And especially the work with the budget advisory committees. Thank you, Interim Administrator Rogers, for your great work with this, as well as other projects.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll go to our administrator at this time with some recommended changes in the administrative interview schedule, or actually just firming them out. And I think that also Pam Hicken has been working with it as well. So either one of you, would you like to make any more comments on this? Rena or Pam?
I do not have any more comments. This is Pam. Thank you, Chair. I'll let Rena take it away.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Pamela and Commissioners. We learned last week that we've had 34 applicants for the position of administrator for Cook County, which is a really good number, an amazing number, and hopefully we'll get some outstanding candidates. Gary Wires from DDA is currently gleaning through those. He will pick the top 14 candidates, and those candidates will undergo some basic screening tests, personality assessment, and they will also prepare video answers, short answers to a number of questions for the commissioners to review. So this particular thing is a request to approve some changes to the search timeline. It actually moves it up a little bit. It would have board selection of the finalists on August 18th. We had hoped maybe we could do that on the 3rd or 4th when we meet next week, but Mr. Wire said that wasn't possible to give the candidates a long enough time to respond to their parts and then the commissioners to do the review. So the next available meeting after the election is August 18th. That particular day is Committee of the Whole. So we would need to set up a special meeting at the end of the Committee of the Whole for the purpose of discussing and selecting candidates for an interview. And then the second half of this is that the interviews would be scheduled on September 10th. That's a Thursday. I believe they'll probably be virtual, and commissioners should plan on that taking the whole day. So the recommendation is just to request the following changes to the search timeline: the board selection of finalists through a special meeting on August 18th, and then the interviews scheduled on September 10th.
Okay. We'll do a roll call vote on how this fits, I guess, each commissioner's schedule and commitment, or any questions that they may have. And I'll start with Commissioner Doo-Kirk.
I will make it work. This is very important and it needs to be taken care of. Over.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Storlie.
Right. I'll make it work. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Deschampe.
I will not be here. I will not be here.
But any comments you have, Commissioner Deschampe?
No.
Okay. Then I'll entertain a motion to adopt the schedule for August 18th for the selection of
Commissioner Doo-Kirk.
Okay.
Commissioner Doo-Kirk, so moved.
Sure. Thank you. We have support?
Storlie, support.
Okay. Do a roll call vote. Commissioner Deschampe?
Aye. Aye.
Commissioner Doo-Kirk?
Aye.
Commissioner Storlie?
Aye.
Commissioner Bursheim is aye. Very good. Okay, Administrator Rogers, any other updates that you'd like to present to us this morning?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. Just a couple of quick things that are just going on, just give you a couple quick updates. We've been working here in the courthouse with the courts and the election team on our limited opening operations for the upcoming primary election and for the ever-expanding court operations that are here. So some of that is about signage, working with our deputy at the front, figuring out how we'll keep, it turns out on Election Day coming up on the 11th, there's actually a court day as well. So really looking at our operations internally to keep people safe. And this is expanding. I just got notified this morning that the first jury trial here in the courthouse will be probably September 9th through 11th. Jury trials bring in all kinds of other kinds of challenges, both for the courts and us, as we try to figure out where to put juries while they're deliberating and keep them socially distanced, and different people that are here to observe the trial. So a lot of activity going on around that. We'll view the election process as a kind of a warm-up for the November election, and we'll do some evaluation of how effective our processes were, see if we need to update them before November, under the assumption that we'll still be dealing with COVID stuff by then. The Windows project is winding to a close. The St. Germain's will be out here again later this week to address a couple of the checklist items that were left, and hopefully that one gets done very soon. Budgets were due this week, and Brady and I have been reviewing the budgets as they come in and meeting with department heads, particularly when there are changes on new budgets, new requests. Of course, you know, we asked the department heads to keep that to a minimum, and so when they are coming in with a new request, we're talking it through with them and making sure we understand. The CARES Act task force is moving along. The business community and our public health human services grant processes will both be rolled out this week. And so hopefully we'll start very soon getting money back into the hands of businesses in the community as soon as possible to start reimbursing them for some of the expenses they've had. And then, you know, you passed the hiring of a couple of temp employees for public health this morning. Those will be paid for out of the CARES Act. So we're moving along with that, and Brady's office has done a good job about getting accounts set up, and we're kind of starting that process. And I'm hopeful that we'll be able to use up the allocation and spread it around in an effective way. And then the last thing is, last week at the Committee of the Whole, we talked about bringing the Joint Powers group together to talk about community approach to racial inequities. So we haven't set a date yet. We sent out a doodle poll to be distributed to the various boards, councils that are included in the Joint Powers, and looking for responses from those groups so that we can set up a day that works for most people. That's what I've got.
Thank you. Any questions or comments for Administrator Rogers? All right. Let's go on to employee concerns, commissioner concerns, and we'll start with commissioner reports or concerns. Please state your name.
Commissioner Storlie.
Okay. Commissioner Storlie, go ahead.
So my concern right now is the census. So Rena, are we still at the bottom? What is going on that, you know, people are home, and it's very discouraging that, you know, the majority of the state has turned in the census quite sufficiently, and Cook County has been at the bottom. So is there any updating that you know of?
So Commissioner Storlie, one thing I learned a couple of weeks ago, kind of by accident, because it wasn't clear in previous meetings with the census people, is that the percentage, our response rate, is not based on the number of people who live here, it's based on the number of properties. And so, since about 60% of our properties are in the seasonal category, that, for us to get above 40% would require all of the seasonal property owners to go in and do the census a second time and say, you know, hey, 0 people live in this cabin the year-round. I talked to the census people. I said, can you, when you distribute these things, you know, to houses, when you do that in person, can you put like a flyer in there that says that? And they said, no, they can't do that. So I'm unclear how to get that word out to seasonal people and how to make them care about doing the census twice. I've talked about it on the radio. I've talked to Rob Eklund about it. I don't know. I'm open for suggestions if somebody has an idea about how we would do that. But the bottom line is, it doesn't affect the total count if the people who live here do it. So that's kind of it just looks bad, but it's not necessarily bad.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, it looks bad. That's what I've been going on. So
it does. I couldn't figure out why it was so low, and that's why it's so low, because it's when they figure out how many responses they want, they do that based on the number of actual residences, actual buildings that people could live in.
Right.
I had a fairly lengthy conversation with Representative Eklund about it a couple of weeks ago. He called me and wanted to know what was going on, and I explained it, and he goes, well, that's, every time I talk to you, I learn something. I'm like, well, if you guys have ideas at the state how to make this work better, I'm all in. And he hasn't called me back.
Yeah. Well, that's why I bring it up, because that money is, really important based on our population. And if 60% of our properties are, only occupied by seasonal people, then they're not part of our county, are they?
Well, not part of our census of residents, no.
Yeah.
So and personally, I tried to go out and do my own cabin out there, as a second one, and it didn't recognize the address and it wouldn't let me do it. So, and the census workers did not leave a packet there for me to use with the 12-digit number. So, I don't know. It's not. I'm frustrated too.
Right. Okay. Well, join the frustration group then. Thanks, Rena.
Okay, any other questions, comments?
Yeah, this is Commissioner Doo-Kirk.
Commissioner Doo-Kirk, concerns or reports?
I do have a concern. I have a concern that we have a commissioner whose time with us is almost over and has stated their frustration in being a commissioner and working together. I've stated my frustration, and I sit here through the meetings and listen to commissioners talk and talk and talk. I've been interrupted by commissioners who talk an awful lot, but when Commissioner Deschampe brought up his feelings, he was met with dead silence by those commissioners. And then he did not stay and participate in the human rights conversation because of his feelings and the way that he feels he has been treated. And his voice during that conversation was incredibly important because he has faced diversity because of who he is and where he comes from. And I want this board to do something and to recognize that there is a big problem and we need to work on it and we need to fix it, and we're going to have to work on it without that voice going forward. Over.
Thank you. Yes, I think that's something we have to think about. It certainly could be part of the racial discussion, but yeah, I hear what you're saying. That's unfortunate. So we have those.
It's not part of the racial discussion. It's a part of a discussion of us and how we work together.
Sure. Yes, I agree. I'm not disagreeing with you at all. Any other questions or comments? All right, meeting update. Meetings to note, we have a regular Board of Commissioners meeting scheduled for August 11th. This has been rescheduled to August 4th due to the primary election. So that'll be next board meeting for us. Any other comments, questions, concerns before I adjourn? Thank you. Then we'll adjourn this meeting for today, and hope everyone has a good day. And we'll adjourn.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
There you go.
So Bob, are you going to stay on the Parks and Trails Commission?
Yeah, I probably will. Because then I'll be on There's a lot of boards that Portage is on, or is on, but they have nobody on.
Yeah. I would really like you to be a part of looking at what we can do there.
Yeah.
I think it would be really good. It'd be really good. This is not Lieu Lake, you know? It's something else. I think that phone is broken. I told Keisha that it's 7 years old, so it did that, but then when I tried to call, try and call your cell phone and see if it works.